If you've spent any amount of time in the Undertale or Deltarune community over the past few years, chances are you've heard the name Materia Music come up at least once, and probably not in a particularly positive context. Materia is the company responsible for publishing and managing Toby Fox's music. On paper, they should play a straightforward role: protect the music, support creators, and stay out of unnecessary drama. In practice, however, Materia has developed a reputation for doing almost the exact opposite. The recurring problem with Materia Music isn't that they're cartoonishly evil or actively trying to sabotage content creators. Most of the time, their intentions are defensible, and sometimes they even lead to genuinely helpful outcomes. However, the issue is often how those situations are handled in ways that are bafflingly unprofessional, needlessly confrontational, and completely out of step with the community they operate within. Instead of clear communication or quiet internal resolutions, we get public tirades, condescending statements, and a CEO who seems incapable of logging off Twitter when things start going wrong. Over the past few years, this pattern has repeated itself again and again. An issue arises, creators get understandably upset, and then Materia responds poorly, causing the situation to escalate, and eventually Toby Fox himself has to step in to clean up the mess. From the Undertale Yellow controversy to bizarre mockery of creators under pressure, to revenue sharing claims that quietly siphon creators' income, the common thread is always the same: a failure to communicate responsibly. So today, I want to walk through these incidents, not just to recap the drama, but to examine why Materia keeps finding itself here, and whether there's any real hope that things might finally change. But first, be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos. Also, comment your thoughts below. I want to know what you all think about Materia Music. Finally, I'd like to preface that I do not condone any harassment against Materia or anyone working at the company. One-off valid criticism is okay, but continuous beratement and threats are completely unacceptable. Anyway, onto the video. The thing about these incidents with Materia Music is that while they usually aren't doing anything explicitly malicious, they have a habit of handling issues and complaints in very unprofessional ways that are definitely unbecoming of a publication company. If you don't remember, in late 2023, the founder and CEO of Materia, Sebastian Wolf, otherwise known as Toby Fox's evil twin, went on a completely unprompted tirade against Undertale Yellow, a very popular fan game which had been in development for over half a decade at that point. Essentially, he just waffles about how the developers of Undertale Yellow might be infringing on Materia's licensing agreements with Toby Fox by using the Undertale logo in the OST cover art, and the use of Toby's motifs and melodies throughout the soundtrack. It was just incredibly condescending for the man who functionally managed the rights to Toby Fox's discography to say, "Hey guys, this fan game you're making here is cute, but here are all of the issues with that I'm just gonna bring up even though they don't amount to anything. Hope this helps." It gets even worse because Wolf just kept arguing with people in this same condescending tone, and he even promised to donate $10,000 to the Undertale Yellow dev team if anyone could prove that Toby Fox had given express permission to the team back when the fan game first began development. Everything was made somehow even worse because Materia Music would then begin claiming YouTube videos which contained music from Undertale Yellow. This included playthroughs of the game, which is obviously insane. Finally, you have to remember that Wolf prefaced the whole thread by saying that he doesn't speak for Toby Fox or his dev team, so he is aware that what he says doesn't matter in any way, so why speak at all? Toby Fox is well known for being very open to his music being used publicly. Anyway, eventually the official Undertale Yellow Twitter account posted a message stating that the issues were resolved in private and that Materia would stop claiming videos using Undertale Yellow music. However, Wolf continued to double down against his detractors, especially when it came to the $10,000 bet, prompting the Undertale Yellow account to reply with a message on behalf of Toby Fox, basically saying that while Wolf is technically correct that permission was only granted very recently, he handled the situation very poorly, and as an apology, Toby donated $20,000 to a charity of the Yellow team's choice. I think it's extremely embarrassing that a game developer has to bail his own publication company out of a public relations disaster with an insane amount of money like that. And this should have been the end of Materia Music getting into unnecessary scuffles with the community, but of course, it wasn't. I'd like to preface the next segment will be mentioning Shay, the former speedrunner who's since been ousted for, you know. So if you don't want to hear about them, you can skip ahead to the next timestamp. Anyway, the next prominent incident occurred in mid-2024, almost exactly 5 months after the Undertale Yellow discourse, when Shay reported copyright claims on some of their recent videos due to the use of the Undertale soundtrack. They posted about it on Twitter, prompting Materia Collective, the umbrella brand of Materia Music, to reply in such a stupid way that it basically spawned another meme in the community. Like, why would you tell someone to calm down in such a condescending manner when you are the most likely source of the problem that person is experiencing? Well, it turns out that the claim didn't come from Materia and actually came from another third-party copyright corporation called IPRS. That doesn't excuse their behavior. It's even more insulting because they essentially pulled a "I told you so" argument by saying that this is what happens to creators when Materia plays too passively with their copyright policies. Materia was rightfully called out for this incredibly immature and unprofessional statement. However, they continued to double down even harder with this complete drivel that basically amounts to them saying, "Stop criticizing us and be grateful that you have a company willing to help you solve your issues." Absolutely magnificent. The problem was obviously resolved eventually, and up until recently there haven't been too many issues aside from the occasional copyright claim, which is quickly rectified by people in the company who actually do their jobs instead of posting crap on Twitter. Around the 20th of January 2026, several YouTubers who make Undertale songs, remixes, or original fan tracks expressed concerns that their videos were being claimed by Materia. However, these videos were actually being put under a revenue sharing system, meaning that Materia could determine a percentage of the video's revenue that they would take. This is pretty bad for the creators, but in theory it should at least be better than the video getting completely demonetized, right? Well, according to some shared analytics, content creators weren't receiving any revenue, meaning all of it was going to Materia, basically putting the so-called sharing on the same level as demonetization. Now, it's time for a new segment of the video, the Serial Quiz Show. Egads, looks like Materia Music has got themselves into more copyright-based discourse and needs to do some PR damage control. Do they A. Immediately release a statement to explain what's happening? B. Temporarily revert the changes until they can get the revenue split to work properly? Or C. Have the founder and CEO of the company act condescending to people on Twitter? If you guess C, you win! Congratulations! Your prize is that you get to continue watching the video. To everyone who guessed wrong, I suggest you go and rewatch this video from the beginning to revise the fact that Materia couldn't possibly do the smart thing first. So as I said, our best friend Sebastian Wolf is back and beefing harder than ever. I don't even know what to say anymore, to be honest. One thing that strikes me most about this man is simply how much of a child he acts like. Like, come on, he's a grown adult who created and runs his own publication company that's in the middle of taking people's entire livelihoods. And meanwhile, he's smugly poning the nerds like the cool millennial he is. You can literally go to his Twitter page, click on the replies section, and just scroll down and down and down for like a full minute and a half before you get to anything before the 20th of January. It's insane how many people he argued with and how many replies he sent. And the thing is, most of the people he argued with are just randos who weren't affected at all by Materia's changes, but for some reason Wolf just had some pathological need to own these random people in the marketplace of ideas instead of doing the normal thing and just, staying quiet until his company put out an official statement. Oh, actually, speaking of official statements, Materia didn't put one out, Toby Fox did. On January 24th, he addressed the issues in a thread on Twitter. Toby talks about how YouTube recently changed their copyright policies, which would lead to stricter guidelines and possibly more strikes and claims on content creators. As such, Materia Music decided to implement revenue sharing on potentially at-risk videos to prevent them from being hit with harsher measures, which seems altruistic enough. However, Toby admits that the changes weren't communicated at all to anyone, which was the cause of a lot of the outrage over sudden changes to creators' videos' monetization. In fact, Toby even claims that he wasn't even aware of this decision made by his own publication company before it was implemented, which, just seems like very poor management on Materia's part. Now Materia is seemingly trying to set the revenue share as low as possible so creators can still earn as much as they can while remaining protected from further potential copyright issues. In some good news though, the company is hiring someone else to handle YouTube-based problems, meaning that Sebastian Wolf won't be responsible for PR regarding changes to Materia's copyright policy. This is honestly pretty good. While Wolf will still be working at Materia, obviously since he's the CEO and all, he's now basically got no reason to argue with anyone on social media, and Jamie, the Vice President of Business Development and one of the few Materia employees who content creators have reportedly had actual pleasant interactions with, promises to be more active in communicating changes in company policy and also says that he's hiring an expert who specializes in YouTube copyright to handle future decisions, as well as promising changes to the FAQ section of the Materia website to more clearly express the company's goals and intentions, though from what I've seen currently, no changes have been made as of yet. A lot of people justifiably seem to want Toby Fox to ditch Materia Music and seek out a more professional and more communicable publication company, though that probably isn't possible as Toby is likely under a contract that prevents him from jumping ship whenever he wants. And I'm not sure if this is a hot take, but I don't think Materia Music is doing the worst job. I mean, they have the occasional public meltdowns, but for the most part they do end up resolving the issues that they start, and now that Sebastian Wolf has been pushed out of the public relations picture, and promises of positive change with how the company communicates to the public on the way, there's a chance that we won't have any more of this drama, hopefully. And that's not to mention that Materia Music is actually helpful for a lot of creators who have copyright disputes, like false claims from third parties. Say what you will about the whole "Shay, it's late, go to bed" statement, but at least they did end up solving their problem eventually. Since a lot of these issues are also resolved in private emails and not on public forums like Twitter, most people don't realize that Materia actually does a lot to try to help behind the scenes. At the very least, without Materia Music, there would be a lot more drama and a lot more copyright issues for creators trying to use Toby Fox's music. At the end of the day, the frustrating thing about Materia Music is that so many of these controversies feel completely pointless. Time and time again, the underlying issue isn't some unavoidable legal obligation or malicious intent. It almost always amounts to poor communication, impulsive public responses, and a consistent inability to read the room. When creators are stressed about copyright claims, they don't need smug reassurance or Twitter arguments. They need clarity, transparency, and a company that understands the power imbalance at play. To Materia's credit, most of these situations do eventually get resolved. Claims are reversed, policies are adjusted, and behind the scenes, there are clearly employees who are genuinely trying to help creators navigate YouTube's increasingly hostile copyright system. That's something worth acknowledging. On the other hand, it's deeply embarrassing that resolutions so often require Toby Fox himself, who, need I remind you, hired this company so he wouldn't have to deal with this stuff, to step in to clarify policy, apologize for bad actors, or literally donate tens of thousands of dollars to charity to undo reputational damage. A publication company should be shielding its artists from controversy, not creating situations where the artist has to act as the company's PR department. The recent promise to bring in dedicated YouTube copyright expertise and remove Sebastian Wolf from public-facing communication is cautiously a good sign. Whether those promises turn into meaningful, lasting change remains to be seen. Materia Music isn't irredeemable, but if they want to stop being at the center of constant discourse, they need to learn a very simple lesson. Stop arguing, start explaining, and maybe, just maybe, log off before things spiral out of control again. Thank you for watching this video. As I said, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts below. What do you think about Materia? Do you think they can change? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.